Good evening, everyone. My name is Marquita Riley, the Student Programs Coordinator for SWE. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for College Considerations, which is a SHLA session. If you need to ask a question during the webinar, go ahead and type your questions within the chat box, and we'll make sure that they are answered at the end of the session. After this presentation is complete, please be aware that we're going to ask you to complete a survey for feedback on this session. It will be available during the presentation content, and I'll also make it available in the chat as well. Your speaker is going to be Haley Antoine, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her now to begin the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Like Marquita said, my name is Haley, and we are going to chat together about college considerations. Now, first, I wanted to just summarize what we're going to go over this evening. So first off, we want you to be able to identify at least 5 qualities or criteria that are important in choosing which colleges to apply to. Additionally, we want you to recognize the process of choosing a major from an experienced collegiate panel. We have 3 fantastic collegiates who are ready to answer your questions. I'll introduce them in a moment. Then they have very different engineering majors as well. So let's start off by introducing myself. My name is Haley. I am a safety and crashworthiness engineer at Toyota. I went to Cornell University. I'm a very recent graduate. I graduated in December, and I majored in biomedical engineering. Our other moderator this evening is Annie. Annie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes, my name is Annie. I also graduated from Cornell, but I graduated in degree in environmental engineering, and it was before Haley. And I am a water resources engineer at a company called Arcadis. And we are both volunteers with the SWENext Student Programs Committee and Outreach Committee.
Thank you, Annie. So now we're going to introduce our panelists. You won't get to chat with them just yet, but we want you to get your brain flowing and think about all the fantastic things they're part of during the session. So first off, we have Elizabeth.
Ooh, am I introducing myself?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I am currently a master's student at the University of California, San Diego, and I'm studying bioengineering. I did my undergrad at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I majored in biomedical engineering. I'm part of all sorts of different things, most notably SWE, but I've done a lot of different other project groups and societies in the meantime.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Up next, we got Maya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya, and this coming fall, I'll be a sophomore at Princeton in New Jersey, and I'm studying computer science. And I'm very interested in engineering and involved in engineering on campus. So I'm in like Society of Women Engineers on campus and other like computer science related clubs. And yeah, so feel free to ask me about those in the future because I really enjoy them.
Thanks, Maya. All right, Vidya, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name is Vidya. I'm currently going to be a sophomore this fall at the University of Pittsburgh studying chemical engineering. And like everyone else, I'm really involved and passionate about SWE, and I'm also part of Chemi Car Club, and I'm going to be a freshman engineering mentor this fall. So feel free to ask me any questions about that.
Thanks, Vidya. So those are our 3 panelists, and you'll get to chat with them via the chat function after a little bit of prepared material. But if you have any questions brewing now, you can certainly put them in the chat, and we will get to them in a little bit. Quick reminder that this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available in a little while. All right, so first thing to consider, college fit. So what exactly does that mean? So this could mean that this school is a safety, match, or reach school. So a safety school is a school that you're probably going to get into based on your GPA and SAT or ACT scores. A match school is a school that you're within that average range of those same GPA and SAT, ACT scores. And then a reach school would be maybe you're a little bit close to getting into that average range, but it might be a little bit of a stretch to get in. So those are different things that you might want to consider based on just those pure numerical things like your GPA and your SAT scores. Some schools also have assured admissions based on your scores, just purely on your scores, not on your extracurricular activities or anything else about you. So that's another thing that you might want to consider when you are looking at schools. Does this school have that assured admissions? Is ranking or name brand important to you? I think a lot of us oftentimes get caught up in, oh, is my school that I'm applying to in the Ivy League, or is it you know, some fancy Harvard or Maya, no dig on you or me either, Princeton or Yale or anything like that. Is name brand important to you? It's okay if it is, but if it's not, there are also fantastic other schools that are same academic rigor, just maybe with a different name. Additionally, cost is definitely a big thing to consider. If you are paying for college on your own, if your parents are supporting you through college, regardless, school is very expensive. So you want to consider the tuition itself. And then outside of tuition, there's also a ton of other costs associated with college, including living and eating, and maybe you want to have some extra money to go do fun things in the area. So all of those different things are things to consider for your school as well. Additionally, you want to consider if having a private school or a public school is important to you. So here we can see a beautiful picture of Carnegie Mellon University. It's a great engineering school. It's private. The University of California, Los Angeles is a public university. So with those, there are pros and cons to a private and public institution, depending on who you are as a person. Public schools tend to have a larger student body size, while private schools have smaller student body sizes. So those are all things to consider when looking at your different schools. Additionally, maybe you want to think about the campus. So where is the campus exactly? Is it in a city or a rural area? NYU, for example, is in the heart of New York City, while someplace like Cornell, which is located in Ithaca, New York, is a very, very, very tiny town in the middle of the state of New York. So considering if you want to be immersed in a busy city, or just maybe in a nice, quiet college town, that's definitely something that you can consider. You also want to consider maybe, is the part of the United States important to you? Do you want to be close to home? Do you want to be as far away from home as possible? I grew up in San Diego, and then I traveled all the way across the country to the tippy top of New York State to go to school, over 2,000 miles away, which my mom didn't necessarily love, but I was happy to experience something new. Also, the weather might be something important to you. I did grow up in sunny San Diego, and then I chose to go to a school that essentially was the Arctic to me. So if weather is a concern for you, if you do not like the winter, I would not recommend a college north of the Mississippi. Also, if there are things that you're passionate about that you want to keep doing that pertain to, they have to be maybe in a certain environment, for example, like if you want to go to the beach when you're at college, if you want to go hiking, you would want to consider those types of activities and see if they're close by to the school that you are interested in applying to or attending. Also, maybe the campus appearance is something that might be important to you. There are some schools that really increased their engineering buildings after World War II. This is a very common thing we saw over the United States, and they built them really, really quickly. And building buildings really, really quickly in the 1940s may mean that maybe they're not as pretty as we might want them to be. So when you consider applying to a college, maybe a campus appearance is important to you. Also, something that was very important to me were the food options at my campus. Cornell is known for very good food, and there's also, if you dig hard enough on the internet, there is a ranking of undergraduate schools and how good their food is. So maybe you have dietary restrictions as well. Maybe you're vegan, vegetarian, maybe you have some sort of a food allergy. You want to make sure that your school has those options for you. Housing options are also another thing to consider about the campus. Are you only living on campus during all 4 years? Are you supposed to be living off campus after freshman year? Those are all different things to think about, and they're all different based on each college or university. All right, moving on to academics, which I think is is really maybe the deciding factor for me, and maybe for our panelists as well. You can ask them all about that in a little bit. So think about reflectively, what is your best learning style? I know things have kind of been shaken up with the COVID situation. Maybe you're doing online learning right now, or when you go back in the fall, it could be a hybrid. Those types of experiences are actually really good in thinking about your college experience, because maybe you are doing great in this one-on-one environment and having that time to yourself to kind of study on your own. But maybe you really miss being in a busy and bustling classroom. So thinking about, do I like to sit and learn and have the teacher right in front of me? Do I like to do experiments and work with my hands? Those are all different things that you can consider, and they vary based on each school. As far as your major goes, I don't know if you know what you want to do yet. When I was an undergrad, I changed my mind almost every single day my freshman year. For a while, I thought, oh shoot, maybe I'll just quit engineering altogether and I'll go write, books or something. Maybe I'll be a chemical engineer. I thought about that for approximately 4 hours, and then it was out of my mind very quickly. It's okay to change your mind. But if you have that initial feeling that, I think I want to major in mechanical engineering, or I want to major in environmental engineering, you have to make sure that the schools you're going to apply to have that major that you're interested in. And if they don't, then it might not be worth applying to. Will your AP or IB credit be accepted? So this definitely varies from school to school. I thought I was doing the best thing ever by taking AP classes at my high school, and then come to find out many of those credits weren't accepted at my school. At many public institutions, you will have your AP IB credit accepted very easily, but it does depend on the school that you are applying to. So that's something to definitely research. Also, what are the different curriculum opportunities that you have at your school? Is study abroad an option? At some schools, as an engineer, study abroad is not an option for you. If you want to go immerse yourself in an experience outside of the United States for a semester or maybe even a summer, you want to make sure that that is something that your school offers. Also, are there co-op requirements or co-op opportunities? Co-ops are internships that take place over maybe a 4 to 6 month period, depending on the company. So this would take up a whole semester, or a whole semester and a summer, or a whole semester and a winter break. So just depending on the company, but those are fantastic opportunities for you to get hands-on engineering experience while you're still learning, while you're a sophomore, a junior even. So if those are great opportunities at your campus and you're interested in that, you would want to make sure to consider that while you are applying to schools. Additionally, there are these great programs that many schools offer that are 5 years. So in that 5th year, or 4.5 at some, if you can get your requirements done very quickly, you can tack on a master's in engineering or a master's in science with that 5th year. So basically, all you need to do is stay 1 more year and you have a master's degree and an undergraduate degree, which is a great option, because most of the time you don't have to take any graduate tests or really do a full application cycle. Though oftentimes it's very easy just to kind of slide into that 5th year at your school. Additionally, you want to make sure that your school has the career and internship services that you need. So maybe your school works with you day one starting as a freshman, and you want that support, and you are excited to be working with somebody very early on. Maybe the school has a different approach. Maybe it's a little bit more hands-off. Those are things that you'll want to research if those career and internship services are important to you. All right, now the fun part of college, student life. So what's the student body like at this school? A great way to learn about the student body at your school is to talk to students. So maybe right now you don't get the opportunity to do that in person, but emailing the admissions office of that school, they, I'm sure, would be happy to connect you with a student that you're interested in talking to, maybe somebody in the major that you're interested in. Oftentimes schools have ambassadors or students that sign up or volunteer to speak on the behalf of the school. So those are also people that you can get connected with if you just simply reach out to the school. What is the class size like? What are the demographics like? What are the religious communities like? If those things are important to you, that's definitely something that you can pick a student's brain about. Also, what are the extracurricular opportunities like? Are there fun clubs to join? When you go into college, your entire life does not have to be about your engineering or STEM major. You don't just have to do science or engineering all the time. It's super important to have that free time and have fun. Maya's nodding her head. I'm sure she has some fun clubs she'll be happy to talk to you about. But those clubs are great for having that balance of we call it when we're adults work-life balance, but it's the same thing too. When you're in college, you work, you have homework, maybe you're doing extra science like research or something like that, but then you also have a life because you're a developing young adult, and it's important to have fun and do fun things like join the squirrel watching club. That's a real club that's that was at my school. So like I just briefly mentioned, undergraduate research. So this is a great way for you as a emerging scientist or engineer to get technical experience while you're on campus. So this could be anything from a short project that is only a semester long, or you can have sustained involvement in a research laboratory for almost your entire undergraduate career. I was involved in 2 different research groups at my school. I switched around because after the first one, I wasn't super interested in it. And so that's okay too. You can try out different things, and it's a great way to kind of learn more about an in-depth field and get hands-on experience, especially if you're interested in potentially graduate school or medical school, PhD, anything like that. Those research opportunities are a really great way to get that exposure. Also, there are things called project or competition teams. If you're familiar with FIRST or VEX robotics, this is basically that, but scaled up on the national and international scale with huge robots or huge machines that people make. There was a really fun one at my school called Concrete Canoe, where they had to design a concrete canoe and make it float. And that to me is like a crazy concept, like how is concrete supposed to float? But these students figure it out, and you could be part of that type of team too. Also, are there sports or athletics at your school? I can say that Cornell was definitely not a Big Ten athletic school. We didn't really go to the football games, but if that's something that you want to be part of, there are tons of great engineering schools that have a really fun athletics scene. Also, if you are interested in Greek life, these are sororities and fraternities. If you're interested in that or you're not interested in that, talking to a student about how much what the prevalence of Greek life is on campus is something that you'll want to consider. Also, maybe you're interested in political activity. The school I always think of off the top of my head is UC Berkeley. They are very politically active. If that's something that you want to be part of, you just have to make sure that that's available at your campus. Also, I mixed up sports and athletics, so I'll go back to sports. Sports would be something that you yourself can get involved in. So I played intramural volleyball for a little while. There was also like floating like basketball or something really silly like that, where people would get teams together and get in those like inner tubes and throw balls into nets, and that was a full, sanctioned sport by the university for intramurals. So there's different activities like that that you can also get involved in. Also, what's the general social environment like? Are people super serious and super studious, or do people like to have fun and socialize in the dorms, or maybe in your area where students live off campus? Is there a vibrant social environment? Maybe that's not even something that's that important to you. So that's also something to consider. Are there also on-campus job opportunities? If you are interested in working during your undergraduate career, you want to make sure that your school offers a plethora of opportunities to do so. All right, transitioning very briefly into different engineering majors, we wanted to make you aware of the most popular engineering majors today. So right here you can see an artificial heart valve, Boeing 737, the Mackinac Bridge in Michigan, and then a vaccine. So all these things, maybe one or two types of people or scientists or jobs maybe can come to mind when you see these images. However, you'll find that there are tons and tons of different engineers who are involved in making these products and devices, and that can be you someday. So biomedical engineers, material engineers helped make these artificial heart valves. Mechanical and aerospace engineers helped make this 737, in addition to petroleum engineers and electrical engineers. Industrial engineers, civil engineers, and environmental engineers were all involved in making the Mackinac Bridge. And vaccines, we had chemical engineers, computer and science and engineers, if you can believe it. And also there's independent majors at some schools where you can basically just build your own engineering major, which is super cool. All right, so now we will open it up to our question and answer with our three fantastic panelists. So if you have questions, you can start to put them in the chat now. If you have questions that are specific to any particular panelist, you can go ahead and put their name next to it. But if you just have a general question that you want anyone to answer, you can just put it in the chat as is.
Hi, before we begin the panelist discussion for Q&A, we're going to go ahead and launch a quick poll right fast that we want you all to reply to. So go ahead and launch the poll. Give us a couple seconds. It should show up just in a second.
Hey, this is Cameron Wagner from the SWE headquarters team. I'm just going to share the poll results in case anyone can't see them. So we asked if anyone has decided on an engineering major yet. We had one person say yes, which is great. 4 people said no, and then most people said kind of. So I think everyone's in the same boat for that. And then we also asked if you had put together a list of colleges that you're interested in applying to. And half of you said working on it, and then the other half was split between yes and no. So thanks guys for sharing. And again, if you have questions for any of the panelists, please share them in the chat.
Thanks, Cam.
So we have a couple of questions coming in.
Yeah, take it away.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. Athena asks, I've never considered a sorority before. Are there any of you that would recommend that you would recommend seeing that I'm interested in computer science? Anybody have any insight?
I guess like I personally am not involved in any Greek life. It's not very big at the school that I go to, but what I do recommend is you can look into professional societies. Like outside of SWE, there are some that are directed specifically toward computer science, like ACM and IEEE. If you want to look into those, they have like women's networks that are a part of those. And then they have discounted student memberships too that have a lot of benefits similar to SWE. So I'd recommend looking into that.
On a similar,
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
On a similar note, I was also not involved in Greek life. However, I did have a lot of friends that were, and there's ways to pursue traditional sororities. And then there's also sets of professional sororities and fraternities as well that are focused on specific majors or like STEM or engineering or chemistry and stuff like that. There's a lot of those kinds of sororities and fraternities that are out there. And I think at least when I was looking at colleges, I don't think I realized that those existed at all. I had a very like fixed perspective on what I thought sororities and fraternities were.
Yeah, definitely. I'd also say that Greek life varies greatly from school to school. The social sororities and fraternities may or may not be on every campus that you look at. I know at my school there were 13 Pan-Hellenic sororities and a handful of other what we called multicultural Greek life sororities and fraternities. And so those are, different options, but other schools in the South maybe have 20 plus sororities. And the culture of each sorority varies greatly from school to school. So that's just something you're going to have to kind of individually look into at each school.
Yep. Just wanted to add that there are engineering sororities and fraternities, but it depends on what school you go to, whether or not they'll have a chapter there. So that's something to look into. Okay, more questions. Let's keep going. From Liliana, how did you decide on which type of engineering major to pursue? And this, I guess, is aimed at everybody on an individual basis.
I can answer this because I see a question that's very similar that's pointed at me a little bit farther down. I know that I was interested in all sorts of engineering for a long time, but there's a couple different things I know from my life that were really stood out to me. And I was always interested in medicine and like the human body. And like my dad's like a very healthy person, sick, healthy person. So medical technology has really impacted him. And so I've always been torn between this idea of, oh, I'm interested in all these different kinds of engineering. And I'm also interested in all these different this kind of medical world. And so I was able to blend those two interests together. And I came up with something like biomedical engineering. Another thing that I've heard a lot of people talk about is like, look at what piques your interest. Like, are you drawn to like taking computers apart, or are you trying to build things outside, like your dad in the garage kind of thing? And so those kind of represent different areas. Like one might be a little bit more electrically inclined, one might be a little bit more mechanically inclined, and kind of feeling those things out can really tune your interest. And you can do that by joining project clubs at your school, your high school as well.
Another thing to add on to that, is definitely look at the career choices and pathways that your engineering can go into. So that's a really big reason I picked chemical engineering, because chemical engineers are needed in all sorts of fields. So I really like that flexibility that I had to like choose later on or choose a different career path later on too.
Yeah, I guess for me, like how I got into computer science is just my dad is a computer scientist, and I'd been to his work. I guess so like right now, maybe you can look into like some virtual job tours or reach out to someone who has like the career that you're interested in going into and see what it's like. Like I was fortunate that my dad does what I want to go into, but like if you don't have someone in your family or someone definitely reach out to your local SWE section and say like, hey, can you connect me with, a computer scientist or a mechanical engineer, and so on and so forth. And I guess like I also took computer science classes in high school. So maybe if your high school like has an engineering path or computer science path, I definitely recommend taking all kinds of classes. Cause like in high school, let's say I took we had civil engineering classes, and I took one of those and I realized I didn't like it, right? So you can try it out, right? In high school, it's not a big deal to take a class that you don't like so much because you're only in it for a year, right? And I would also say, like Haley mentioned, people change their major a lot. And even if you graduate and you're not in the right major, you realize you don't like it, it's okay. I've talked to so many professional engineers, and not none of them, but a lot of them didn't end up where they started. So it's definitely okay, and I wouldn't stress too much about it.
Yeah. And I would like to add on to that a lot of people change their majors based on a class they take in their first or second year of college. So not a big deal at all. From Isolde, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. What if we don't want to be an engineer, but something else that involves science? Anybody want to take that one?
Well, I know there's, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there's a organization similar to SWE. I believe it's called like AWS, or like Association of Women in Science. Like if you look into that, I'm sure they do similar stuff to what SWE does, just in like the more like hardcore scientific disciplines. So you can definitely look into that. And similar, all what we said still applies, right? Like you can contact people from a school that are like interested in majoring that are majoring in what you're interested in, and so on.
And just to add on to that, I mean, there's a very blurry, like very mixed area between science and engineering. They're both very, very compatible. I know in my internships, in my jobs, I've worked with plenty of scientists, and their titles are scientists, and some of them come from engineering backgrounds, some of them are coming from science backgrounds. In academia, you blend engineering and science disciplines all the time. I work with plenty of majors who come from non-engineering backgrounds in the research labs that I've worked in, and so there's a lot of overlap between the two. And so I think looking at the general field you want to be in may be a good way to kind of narrow down what kinds of majors you're looking into.
Awesome. From Anna, this is kind of like a geared towards Haley question, even though she doesn't know it yet. How did you organize your college search?
Sure, I'm sure Maya has some insights. We were just chatting about it yesterday. But the way that I kind of did it was I made a big Excel spreadsheet, and I just went through and I looked at each school I was interested in. I would write down the major that I was thinking about applying to for that specific school. I would write down a couple of other things, like this was also a little bit, beyond these considerations that we talked about, but I would write down like what the average SAT score was, how many letters of recommendation were required, and what other, kinds of things for the application were required. A small plug, we'll talk about it at the end, but we are doing future webinars about all of those topics. So stick around for the dates of those as well. But I basically just had a big Excel spreadsheet, and I sat down on the weekends for hours and did a bunch of research. And that's really the best process, I think, that worked for me.
Yeah, similar to what, oh, sorry.
You go ahead.
Similar to what she did, I also had an Excel spreadsheet and had like one column with all the colleges that I was interested in. And then the first row would be different considerations I was looking at. So like the ratio of the students, the faculty to the class, or like if it was in a rural or a city environment, or different things like that. And I sort of went and looked on their websites and also other articles and sort of like just put a check mark where each college met that criteria. And that's sort of how I narrowed my list down to see, okay, these schools meet exactly what I'm looking at. Let me look into these schools more further to see what interests me the most.
Yeah, and to add on, I would say start broad, right? Like start with a large list and narrow down as you go on, because I guarantee you, like all the schools you start with, you're not going to end up applying to all those, because I'll let you in on a little secret. Applying is kind of a lot of work. Obviously, it's well worth it, but like usually you have to cut it down, right? And so what I would recommend when you first start is Haley gave that amazing list of like a lot of different factors to consider. But so I would go through that list and think about what factors are most important to you, right? Like to me, I really don't like cities. I like more like suburban or rural areas. So that's why I chose like mostly schools that were in like smaller towns and not like, for example, NYU or something like that, that's like in the middle of a city, right? And I would also, if you're unsure about a school or like the school culture, obviously right now it's difficult to tour, but maybe like once the situation with the virus winds down, maybe if you could tour the school, or right now a lot of schools have put up virtual tours, or even like a lot of schools have like been built in Minecraft, I heard, or something like that. So that's an option, I guess. Yeah, so I recommend like just thinking about which factors are most important to you, and like cost too. Cost is a big thing, right? Because like obviously there are so many schools you want to go to, and you should not let costs hinder you from going there. But think about like how good is that school's financial aid? Like how much does it cost? I think that was important to me. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Damaris's question, Elizabeth already answered. Toluwani, Vidya, what drew you to Pitt?
So my older sister actually studied bioengineering at Pitt 7 years before me. So when I was little, I would always like visit her. And so that's what initially how I like was comfortable with the school. But then when I started my own research later in high school, I knew that so I currently live in like a suburban environment. So I knew I wanted to go into a more of a city atmosphere. So Pittsburgh's great. It's located in Oakland, which isn't in the center of Pittsburgh, but it's maybe like a 10-minute bus ride. So I really liked that I had that option to be near the city and in that environment. Another great thing Pitt has is I really like that it was a larger school. I went to a school and my graduating class was like 60 people, believe it or not. So I liked how Pitt they have over, I believe, 15,000 undergraduates, but then the engineering school maybe only has 600 students in the first year. So I really liked how I had the option to meet a lot of people, but also be in my own engineering bubble, if you will, and be connected that way. And they also have a really great study abroad and co-op office, and they really support you throughout college. So those are some of the things I looked for and what really drew me to University of Pittsburgh.
Okay, awesome. We've got some more questions, but we've got 20 minutes, so a little bit shorter answers if possible. So let's see. Any advice for wanting to do some type of engineering like computer science, but also want to do something like animation from Amanda? So a double major question. There's a couple in here that are like that. Let me just go through them. Haley is really conflicted on which major to apply. CS and electrical engineering are top choices. And then we've got one down here from Lucia that says, is it hard to double major with an engineering degree? And from Liliana, are there certain engineering degrees that are good to double major with CS? So if everybody can, think about that kind of a thing and answer whatever that you can think
I'll
of.
start. As far as the first question, I would consider something like a minor. I would say that double majoring in engineering is actually very hard. And actually at my school, you cannot double major in engineering. And so that's not actually a possibility, but minors are very much a possibility. And so that's something that's very doable and something I would recommend. As far as the decision between CS and electrical engineering, there's a lot of overlap. Cal Poly San Luis Obispo actually has a separate degree called computer engineering, which is a mix of electrical and computer science. And so I would look into something like that in schools that have programs like that. But yeah, try to shorten it a little bit.
Yeah, just to add on, that's something to consider in your college search, right? You can look into school, like Cal Poly doesn't let you double major and Princeton doesn't either, but some schools might, right? I know one of my other schools that I was applying to was Berkeley, and I got in for a major called EECS, which is electrical engineering and computer science. So that's actually what you were interested in. It's like them put together as one major, right? So you can look into what different schools offer as far as majors and minors go. And to speak to the animation, if you look into web development and user interface design, some of that is very similar to animation, and that's a subset of computer science. So I definitely recommend looking into that. And I also saw that you mentioned that you don't have as much coding experience as you'd like, and that's perfectly okay. I know so many people who entered the major with no experience whatsoever. You will start from the basics and they'll build you up. You shouldn't worry about that at all. Definitely there will be so many people that are in your same situation.
Yeah, just on that note, college is the place where they're supposed to teach you. It is totally okay to not have any engineering background really at all. Having the interest and having a passion for engineering is really what matters the most. So don't feel like you're inadequate just because you haven't had some experience yet, because you will certainly get that in college, and that is exactly what college is for.
Okay. Vidya, did you have anything else to add? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm also just like to say, sort of adding on to that, explore your interests in your first year. I didn't have any coding experience going into college at all, but I took an intro to coding class and I found out that I liked it a lot. And I'm actually considering minoring in computer science now. So definitely keep your options open and don't feel like you're completely structured in what you want to do. Keep your options open. There's definitely so many ways to learn in college.
And also, sorry. Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to add on something that I never thought about, but something to consider is you can look into what the required classes are for that major and minor, because sometimes that major as a whole might appeal to you, but the actual classes that the school you're applying to requires you to take might not. So I definitely recommend looking into that. Course catalogs are very publicly available. So.
Yeah, similar to that, I was going to say that if you look into the curriculum requirements for majors and minors, some of them have vast overlap and some of them don't, and that could factor greatly into a decision if you're going to get a particular major or minor. And some of them you only have to take a few extra classes, and some of them it's basically no overlap whatsoever. Okay, Maya, how did you choose your college? And what other colleges were in your top 5 for computer science?
I guess so for me, financial aid was a big thing when I was deciding between schools, and also the school culture. I think that like Princeton, one of the reasons I picked Princeton is they have like amazing financial aid. And I'd say actually in your college search, that's something to consider. There's a difference between sticker price, which is like what you see when tuition is listed, and like the actual price you're gonna have to pay for financial aid. So I would definitely look into that. Like you would think, so like if I'm comparing Berkeley and Princeton, right? Like this is the experience I had. Berkeley is a public school and I'm from California. So the tuition was, you would think it would be significantly cheaper, but actually Princeton was significantly cheaper for me because since they're a private school, they can give more financial aid. So that's something to look into. And also related to that, like outside scholarships, you should look into like if the college takes outside scholarships or not. Because I applied to a bunch and then I realized that Princeton just doesn't take them. So I definitely recommend looking into that. That's a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, so I just thought about, and so they have, usually for admitted students, they have events where you go and visit the college and talk to students if you get admitted. And I really like the culture at Princeton versus another school I visited. People seemed very hostile and like very overly competitive. And that deterred me from attending that school. So yeah, just visiting and doing my research like about costs and stuff. As for the other colleges, I mean, there's so many great colleges for CS, so I'll just like leave it at that, I guess.
Okay, we got 2 questions related to going to schools in California for Elizabeth. So this is going to be our last question. Sorry, everybody, we're running a little low. We got to do a wrap up.
Ooh, Annie, I have one more question I want to do after Elizabeth's. Elizabeth.
Okay, but yeah, Elizabeth,
right.
we've got the favorite part of going to schools in California and why did.
Uh-oh. Is she frozen or am I frozen?
No, she is. Go ahead.
Okay, just making sure. So for me, I really like California. There's a lot of things I love about California. I grew up actually very close to Cal Poly. I actually grew up very close to Cal Poly, which is ironic because I didn't want to go to Cal Poly because it was too close to my home. Like Maya said, cost played a huge role for me between the schools that I applied to and got into. Looking at the cost that my family would have had to pay was a really major deciding factor. Cal Poly is a great school and I loved Cal Poly and I loved going to Cal Poly. I would highly recommend. One of the big things about Cal Poly was that they have a very much a learn by doing philosophy. So we have lab classes tacked on to almost at least half of all the engineering classes I took, and that was super important to me. We had lab classes in small class sizes. And I think that allowed me to really make the most of my education. And then especially when I was applying to grad school, a big way that I cut down on where I was looking at schools is the fact that even though I was much more open to going other places and experiencing new places for undergrad, when I was applying to grad school, I decided that I was a wimp when it came to weather and I was from California and that I wanted to stay in a place that was somewhat more moderate as far as weather went. And that was also because I needed to cut down on schools that I was looking at. And so I would say that those are some great things. Both of the schools I go to are in very beautiful places. And so there's a lot of nature around, even though San Diego is also a larger city as well.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I want to close from this question from Anna, which I definitely love. What defines an engineer to you? So let's have each one of our panelists, and Annie and I can chime in at the end, take about 20 seconds to tell us what defines an engineer. Elizabeth.
Ooh, what defines an engineer to me is a problem solver of any kind. Somebody that looks at the world, asks why it works, and then wants to come up with solutions for things that don't work, no matter what kinds of problems those are. Those can be very theoretical problems in a lot of ways, but most of the time they are a little bit more hands-on and physical, and they impact people a little bit more physically in some way. And so I think that's what an engineer is to me, is a problem solver.
Thank you. Vidya.
Definitely engineers are problem solvers. Another thing I think about when I think engineering is being curious about the world around you. So to be problem solvers, it's a good thing to think outside of the box to come up with solutions. To do that, you should be curious about different things, find out why they work, how they work. then you can adapt that to other situations. So I think just being genuinely curious is a great characteristic to have for engineers.
Awesome. Maya.
Definitely, like, I agree with both of what you guys said. And also in engineering, like, you fail a lot, right? You make a lot of mistakes, like, you build things like 100 times before they work. So definitely, like, a quality of an engineer is that they're able to, like, persevere and, like, work with others to create, like, to problem solve. Yeah.
Awesome. Annie.
Sure. Similar to everybody else, obviously, but personally, I found an issue in the world in terms of environment and particularly water, and I decided I wanted to do something to fix it, and that's why I became an environmental engineer. But a lot of people will have similar stories, but find whatever is important to you and
Oh no.
just
I'm gonna go ahead and
if you want to go fix it, become an engineer.
okay.
Sorry.
We'll come back to
Out a
you.
little
Sorry
bit.
about that, guys.
I will kind of just chime in about why I think, engineering is amazing. I think regardless of the type of engineer you are, if you're a biomedical engineer, if you're a computer scientist, if you're an environmental engineer, at the end of the day, your end user or the customer of whatever you make or create is another human being. It may be inadvertently through the environment. Maybe you're doing something with animals. But I think engineering, maybe we don't always think of it as like a human-centric career. But that's kind of the way I see it. I think that it's so special to be able to touch the lives of others through this amazing science and technology and engineering and math that you work hours and hours and hours to put out a product with a big team of people at your company, or maybe you end up being a researcher at a university and you research this really small thing that maybe only affects 10 people, but you are affecting people at the end of the day, and I think that that's super, super special. All right, so I know we had a couple of other questions that we did not get to answering to. If you still have them burning in your mind, feel free to email them to SWENext@SWE.org. We'll put the email in the chat as well, so you can email your questions there. Before we end, we have our survey, and then we have a little bit left at the end that will only take a few minutes. So I'm going to flip over. Thank you to everybody who asked questions. We super appreciate all your curiosity about our experiences that our panelists have. So please take out your phone and scan here and take about 2 minutes to fill out our survey. We will super, super appreciate it. And we'll be back in about 2 minutes with a bit of wrap up. And Marquita has also put the survey right there in the chat. So you can click on it, the Survey Monkey link right there. Just go ahead and click on it. All right, perfect, Sharon. All right, take about 60 more seconds and we'll be right back with you. All righty. Thank you so much for the feedback. We are, as I'll show in a few slides, we have 3 more of these webinars, and we really value your feedback so we can improve every single time we do these webinars and make them fantastic. So thank you so much for that. We just wanted to wrap up by talking about our SWENext program. So if you have, registered for this, you are involved in SHLA. But if you don't have too much knowledge about what SWENext is, we wanted to give you a little bit more information. So SWENext this year is our 5th anniversary, which is so exciting. And it's supported by student programs or SWENext committee volunteers. So Elizabeth, Annie, Vidya, Maya, and I, and another army of volunteers, of fantastic women in engineering are supporting this program to put on things for you. And so this is a great way to be involved in the SWE community, which we are all a part of, before you start in college. And it gives you great access to engineering resources, scholarships, college preparation opportunities such as this one. And also there's an annual awards and recognition program, which, by the way, looks great on a college application. And by the way, it's free. Another aspect of SWENext are our SWENext Clubs. So you can think of this as kind of a mini version of what we call SWE sections. So SWE sections are basically groups of SWE members in a given area or at a college or a university. And so your SWENext club that you can start yourself, and Elizabeth can help you because she works, and Vidya as well, they both work with SWENext clubs very closely. They can help you start this club. If you are interested in starting a SWENext club, you can just email SWENextClubs@SWE.org to learn more. In this club, you can do anything from outreach with younger students, teaching elementary school students about engineering or science. You can do competitions that the committee puts out each year. We just had our SWENext annual club challenge close this year. It's a video contest where you and your club produce a video. So there's a lot of fun opportunities that you can do with your school, and especially now. So maybe you're virtual or hybrid when you start up again. This club could be a great opportunity to get you and your peers together outside of the school hour to still have that personal contact with everyone and enjoy engineering and science and create a fantastic community of, your peers and girls who are interested in engineering at your school. So like I said, you can help people in the community. If you're a FIRST Robotics team, it's also very easy to just turn your FIRST Robotics team into a SWENext club. You can have SWE members, like any of us who are panelists. Annie or I would be happy to talk to your SWENext club about what we do in our careers. You can hear from collegiate SWE members about their college majors. At the moment, maybe a tour of local industry is a little difficult, but some SWE members may be willing to give a virtual tour of where they work. So those are all fantastic opportunities within SWENext and SWENext Clubs. Again, if you have any questions about those two programs, you can email SWEnext@SWE.org or SWEnextClubs@SWE.org. Either one will get you the same people. So upcoming, we're so excited that this entire month, each Thursday, same time, we will be covering more college topics. So our next one next week is about resumes and letters of recommendation. Our third is about the college essays and the Common Application. And then finally, we'll wrap up with financial aid and scholarships. And where you found the registration link to this webinar on that same SWE webpage, you can find the registration links for these ones as well. If you're having trouble finding any of that, just email SWEnext@SWE.org. I can't say it enough. That's my favorite email. So I wanted to thank everyone so much for attending. I know Marquita will come on in a hot second to close us out, but we really appreciate you coming tonight. Again, if you have any final questions, please just email us and we will get you in touch with the right person to answer any and all of your questions about college considerations. So thank you so much.
Thank you again, Haley, for hosting this session. And I want to also follow up by thanking the panelists. Your responses were fantastic. I would have loved to have each and every one of you around when I was picking a college many years ago. And I just wanted to say that we've reached the end of our time together, as Haley stated. Please make sure that you fill out the survey that is provided in the chat box. If the QR code took you to a different link, It should say preparing for college applications. So that's the one that you will need to fill out. So make sure that you follow the link in the chat box that should send you to the correct survey. Also, I wanted to say that we will have an on-demand recording of this webinar made available in the SHLA classroom. A lot of you might have already gotten your invitation to the classroom. If not, you will be receiving your invitation after this meeting today in an email. So please be on the lookout for that, as well as the recording. If you, again, have any additional information, if we haven't stressed it enough, please feel free to email us at SWENext@SWE.org for any questions you might have specifically for the panelists, HQ, or just in general about SWENext. Feel free to email that as well. So thank you again for attending this session. I appreciate your time this evening. I hope this was helpful and beneficial to each and every one of you all, and I look forward to seeing you all in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.